Welcome back, friends, to this expanded and deeply emotional tribute to one of jazz's most beloved figures, Chuck Mangione. If you've been with us before, you know we touched on his incredible life, but today, we're diving even deeper, extending our journey to truly honor the man behind the music. For those new here, Chuck's story is one that resonates with anyone who's ever felt the pull of a melody or the warmth of family ties. His iconic hit "Feels So Good" isn't just a song. It's a feeling, a moment of pure bliss that has soundtracked countless lives. In this longer exploration, we'll weave through his biography with more intimate details, share heartfelt stories from his family life, reflect on his understated lifestyle, examine his net worth in the context of his enduring legacy, and yes, confront the sorrow of his passing. This isn't just a script. It's a heartfelt conversation, one that might bring a tear to your eye or a smile to your face as we remember the joy he brought. So, find a comfortable spot, perhaps with your favorite jazz record playing softly in the background, and let's immerse ourselves in the world of Chuck Mangione. It's going to be a longer ride this time, filled with more stories, more emotions, and more of the magic that made him unforgettable. Let's begin where many searches led. The sad reality of Chuck Mangione's death, a moment that shook the music world and left fans like you and me reflecting on the fragility of life. It was on July 22, 2025, that Chuck passed away peacefully in his sleep at his longtime home in Rochester, New York. At 84 years old, his departure was attributed to natural causes, a serene end for a man whose life was anything but quiet. Reports from close sources described it as a gentle slipping away, much like the fading echo of one of his signature flugelhorn solos, lingering in the air before dissolving into silence. There was no prolonged illness announced publicly, no dramatic headlines. Instead, it was a private, dignified exit that mirrored the humility he carried throughout his career. The news broke quickly, with tributes pouring in from fellow musicians, fans, and even those who only knew him through his music on the radio. Imagine the outpouring, social media filled with videos of people playing "Feels So Good" on their own instruments, sharing how his tunes got them through tough times, from heartbreak to everyday stresses. It's profoundly emotional to think about. Chuck wasn't just a performer. He was a companion through his music, and losing him felt personal, like saying goodbye to an old friend whose voice had been there in the background of our lives. But in this extended tribute, let's not dwell only on the end, let's celebrate the full arc of his journey, drawing out the stories that made him who he was, so we can feel the depth of his impact even more. Rewinding to the very start, Charles Frank Mangione entered the world on November 29, 1940, in the vibrant city of Rochester, New York, born to proud Italian-American parents who wove music into the fabric of their daily lives. His father, Frank Mangione, ran a modest grocery store, but his true love was jazz, often bringing home records of the greats and turning family evenings into impromptu listening sessions. Chuck's mother, meanwhile, kept the home alive with the aromas of traditional Italian cooking, creating an environment where creativity and warmth intertwined. From his earliest memories, Chuck was enveloped in this world. Picture a young boy sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, mesmerized by the trumpet wails of Miles Davis or the dizzying bebop of Dizzy Gillespie. It wasn't long before he started experimenting himself, first on the piano, which his parents encouraged with lessons, but it was the trumpet that truly captured his heart, inspired by the classic film Young Man with a Horn starring Kirk Douglas as a fictionalized version of Bix Beiderbecke. By his teenage years, Chuck and his older brother Gap had formed the Jazz Brothers, a group that played local gigs around Rochester, blending the hard-driving bebop they loved with their own youthful flair. These weren't high-paying shows, they were passion projects, performed in smoky clubs and community halls, where the brothers learned the ropes of performance, improvisation, and the sheer joy of making music together. Those formative years were tough. Balancing school, family responsibilities at the grocery store, and late-night rehearsals, but they built the foundation of Chuck's resilience and his deep-rooted love for jazz that would carry him through decades of ups and downs. Extending our look back, it's worth noting how Rochester itself shaped him. The city's rich musical heritage, with its proximity to the Eastman School of Music, provided a nurturing ground for his talents, turning a small-town kid into a burgeoning artist ready to take on the world. As Chuck transitioned into adulthood, his path led him straight to the Eastman School of Music, where he enrolled in 1958 and graduated in 1963 with a degree that polished his technical skills while fueling his creative fire. But the real education came post-graduation when he joined Art Blakey's legendary Jazz Messengers in 1965, spending 2 transformative years touring and recording with the group. Playing alongside masters like Blakey, Chuck absorbed the intricacies of hard bop, learning to weave complex rhythms and bold improvisations into his playing. Yet, even then, his style hinted at something softer, more melodic, a departure from the intensity of his peers. Leaving the Messengers in 1967, he struck out on his own, forming quartets and experimenting with jazz fusion, incorporating elements of rock, pop, and orchestral arrangements that made his music accessible to wider audiences. The 1970s marked his golden era, beginning with the ambitious Friends in Love concert in 1970, a live recording with the Rochester Philharmonic Orchestra that showcased his ability to merge jazz with symphonic grandeur. Albums like Land of Make-Believe followed, but it was 1977's Feels So Good that catapulted him to stardom, with the title track soaring to number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100, selling over 2 million copies, and earning him a Grammy nomination. Delving deeper in this extended script, let's recall the cultural impact. This wasn't just a hit, it was a phenomenon, featured in commercials, movies, and even as background in everyday life, embodying the laid-back vibe of the late 70s. Chuck's success continued with The Children of Sanchez in 1978, a soundtrack for a film that won him his second Grammy, and his compositions graced major events like the 1976 Montreal Olympics with Chase the Clouds Away and the 1980 Lake Placid Winter Olympics with Give It All You Got. But fame had its shadows. The grueling schedule of tours and recordings led to burnout, prompting a 4-year hiatus in the early 1990s where he stepped back to reflect and recharge. He returned in the late 90s with albums like The Feeling's Back, proving his artistry was timeless, and even ventured into voice acting, portraying a fictionalized version of himself on the animated series King of the Hill for several episodes, adding a layer of humor and self-deprecation to his public persona that endeared him to new generations. These later years were marked by selective performances, often in intimate settings, where he could connect directly with fans, sharing stories between songs that made each show feel like a personal gathering. Turning to the personal side, Chuck's family was the anchor that kept him steady amid the whirlwind of his career, and in this longer tribute, let's unpack the beautiful, emotional layers of those relationships. At the core was his brother Gap, born Gaspar Mangione, a brilliant pianist and composer who not only co-founded the Jazz Brothers but collaborated with Chuck on numerous projects, including early recordings like the Jazz Brothers album in 1960. Their bond was profound, forged in childhood jam sessions and strengthened by shared triumphs and challenges on the road. Gap's own career as a musician and educator complemented Chuck's, and they often spoke of how their Italian heritage, with its emphasis on family loyalty and communal meals, kept them close. Their father, Frank, was the catalyst, not just a fan but an enabler, who famously invited jazz legends like Dizzy Gillespie and Art Blakey to the family home for post-show dinners, turning ordinary nights into legendary memories. Chuck often recounted in interviews how these gatherings inspired him, with the smells of spaghetti and meatballs mixing with the sounds of impromptu solos. His mother, meanwhile, provided the emotional backbone, her nurturing presence a constant in a life of travel. Chuck's uncle, Jerry Mangione, a respected author and professor, added an intellectual dimension, exposing him to literature and storytelling that influenced his lyrical compositions. On a more private note, Chuck was married to his wife, Judy, for many years, though he kept details sparse to protect their privacy. Together, they raised 2 children, a son and a daughter, who grew up amidst the music but were shielded from the spotlight. Family statements after his passing highlighted his role as a devoted father and husband, someone who made time for school events and holidays despite his schedule, often bringing home tales from tours that turned dinner tables into storytelling sessions. It's incredibly moving to consider how, even in fame, Chuck prioritized these connections. Holidays filled with Italian feasts, laughter, and music, creating a legacy of love that outshines any award. The grief his family expressed was palpable, with Gap sharing in a touching eulogy how Chuck's infectious spirit and boundless energy extended to every family moment, making his absence feel like a silenced melody in their lives. Extending this reflection, think of the quieter stories. Chuck teaching his kids to play instruments, or family vacations back to Italy to trace their roots, moments that humanize the legend and remind us that behind every great artist is a web of personal relationships that fuel their art. When it comes to lifestyle, Chuck Mangione embodied a harmonious blend of simplicity and passion, a theme we'll explore more thoroughly in this extended narrative to paint a fuller picture of the man offstage. Far from the glitz of Hollywood or the excess of rock stars, Chuck chose a grounded existence, deeply tied to his Rochester roots. He lived in a comfortable but unpretentious home there, surrounded by the familiar landscapes of his youth, the rolling hills, the Genesee River, and the cultural vibrancy of the city that never left his heart. His days, especially in later years, were a rhythm of quiet routines. Mornings spent composing at his piano, afternoons teaching master classes at Eastman or mentoring young musicians, and evenings relaxing with family or listening to old records. After his burnout in the 80s, that 4-year break was pivotal. He traveled less, focused on health, perhaps incorporating walks in nearby parks or enjoying home-cooked meals that harkened back to his parents' kitchen. His Italian heritage played a big role here, with a love for espresso, fine wines, and gatherings where food and conversation flowed freely. Chuck wasn't one for material extravagance. He drove modest cars, wore his signature fedora not as a fashion statement but as a personal trademark, and invested his time in causes like music education, often donating to programs that helped underprivileged kids access instruments. In interviews, he spoke of finding balance. How the high-energy tours of his peak years gave way to selective gigs, like his appearances at jazz festivals where he'd perform with a small ensemble, sharing the stage with emerging talents. It's touching to imagine him in retirement, perhaps gardening or reading books by his uncle, reflecting on a life where music was the constant thread. This lifestyle wasn't about isolation. He stayed connected with fans through social media in his later days, posting clips of new compositions or throwback photos, fostering a sense of community. Emotionally, it's inspiring how he navigated fame's pressures by returning to what mattered: roots, reflection, and relationships, proving that a fulfilling life doesn't require constant spotlight, but rather moments of genuine connection. Finally, let's delve into Chuck Mangione's net worth, a testament to his sustained success, and in this longer script, we'll contextualize it with more details on how he built and managed his fortune. At the time of his death, estimates placed his net worth at approximately $10 million, amassed over a career that produced over 30 albums, numerous hit singles, and a steady stream of royalties. The cornerstone was Feels So Good, which not only sold millions but continues to generate income through streaming platforms, radio airplay, and licensing for ads and films. Think of its use in everything from car commercials to romantic comedies, keeping the cash flow steady. His Grammy-winning works, like Bolivia in 1976 and Children of Sanchez in 1978, added prestige and earnings, while Olympic themes brought in lucrative commissions. Voice acting on King of the Hill provided a fun side income, and live performances, even in his selective later years, commanded respectable fees. But Chuck was prudent. Living in affordable Rochester rather than a celebrity hotspot, he invested wisely in real estate and perhaps music-related ventures, ensuring financial stability for his family. This net worth isn't merely a figure. It's a reflection of impact, how his accessible jazz crossed genres and generations, creating a legacy that pays dividends long after the applause fades. Emotionally, it's poignant to see how he used his wealth not for ostentation but for giving back, supporting jazz education and family, embodying the idea that true richness comes from the lives you touch. As we come to the close of this extended tribute, the emotions well up thinking about Chuck Mangione's extraordinary path. From the jazz-filled streets of Rochester to stages around the world, leaving behind a symphony of memories at 84. His natural causes passing on July 22, 2025, marks the end of an era, but his spirit endures in the melodies that still play in our hearts. We've journeyed through his detailed biography, from youthful bands to Grammy triumphs and comebacks, his profound family ties, rich with Italian warmth and unbreakable bonds, his serene lifestyle, a balance of passion and peace, and a net worth that underscores his lasting influence. Chuck showed us that music is more than notes, it's emotion, connection, and a way to feel so good, even in sorrow. Thank you for spending this time with me, letting his story unfold in all its depth. If this touched your soul, please like the video and subscribe for more heartfelt tributes. Until next time, let the music guide you.